I'm MarzGurl.
I'm JoshKnightTheFirst.
And welcome to episode 113 of MokkoriPlay, the only podcast dedicated solely to all things City Hunter.
On today's podcast, we're going to cover Season 2, Episode 61 of City Hunter, titled, Good Luck, My Sweeper, City Streets for Both of Us, Part 1.
It's the last 3 episodes of the season.
And guess what? They're all connected.
Wow.
Our first and I think only 3-parter
in
in the entire franchise.
Maybe.
And we were saying a while back, like, maybe they should have switched out that the plot for 357 Magnum could have been better served as a 3-parter and not a movie, whereas this one feels like it could have been a movie.
In some ways, yeah, it does. It's more important.
Well, yeah, because we're getting into some juicy stuff here. Like, this is stuff very much tied to the core of these characters, specifically Ryo.
And 357 Magnum kind of felt more like a normal-ass episode.
Right, exactly. But something of this importance, we don't really touch on in a lot of the movies. In fact, most of the movies you can just take or leave, for the most part. They're not going to affect the plot. But not Shinjuku Private Eyes. Well, a little bit Shinjuku Private Eyes. For sure, Angel Dust. Those 2 most recent movies affect the plot.
Well, especially Angel Dust because, hey, remember this whole section of the manga that we just didn't animate? Maybe we should go back and fix that. That's what that movie's like.
And then Shinjuku Private Eyes was like, hey, we should connect Cat's Eye to Cat's Eye, the cafe, and the anime.
And the manga.
They're all here.
Anyway, yeah, these most 2 recent films actually feel like they did something.
Right, exactly. Whereas the other ones, it's just kind of fluff. I mean, not so much fluff, but I don't want to say filler since...
It's not filler, they're just pieces of entertainment, and they don't require too much knowledge in and around the rest of the show. It doesn't really build on it. It doesn't build on the show in any way. Anyway, there's all kinds of things to talk about even before we jump into our episode today, because we're late as shit.
And before we go any further, I'd like to say, on behalf of both of us here at the podcast, our bad.
But because I'm saying that, there's a lot of things that we can be talking about. So one of the earliest things like this happened back when we recorded our last episode, but it was too late because we had already recorded it. There was some news about an animator who had worked on City Hunter. Her name was Mutsumi Inomata, and she had passed away back on March 10th, and then the announcement broke March 17th, March 18th in Japan. And she was just a very important and influential artist. Like, her art designs you might recognize from other things like the Tales of video game franchise. I had personally known her work earliest, like one of my earliest anime experiences was a movie called Windaria. It was a very high fantasy kind of a movie. So there's a very particular style that when you look at her art you go, oh yeah, all these things kind of look the same. Really big shoujo eyes and really big hair and stuff like that. So you could see on the few things that she touched in City Hunter, you're just like, oh yeah, that's her. Like, she worked on the first opening of City Hunter. Right? There's a couple of episodes of one, maybe City Hunter 2. I'm not super certain about
specifically there in City Hunter, in episode 41, that's the intro episode for Reika. She worked on that episode.
She introduced the Mokkori drink, which I'm sure was in the manga, but like you just kind of look at this art and you can tell, oh, it's the big hair, it's kind of shoujo looking eyes in that particular episode. Yeah, you see it in the facial designs in these episodes for sure. So that's just very unfortunate news that came out. Unfortunately, it was like at the same time that we learned that Akira Toriyama had passed away as well.
Right, and the thing about it is it's easy for that news to get swallowed up around everything else, but we did want to...
Akira Toriyama, for sure.
But we did want to go ahead and make mention of that and, speak to that contribution to the show, to City Hunter as a whole, because, those are important episodes.
It's also just kind of crazy. I'm pretty sure City Hunter at some point was running in Shonen Jump at the same time as Dragon Ball.
I believe so, yeah.
Dragon Ball Z by the
80s,
end of it, for sure. And then you see Ryo in Jump Force fighting Goku. For some reason, they're on the same playing field as each other. What a crazy world to live in. That was a very sad period of time, those, 3 weeks ago, or however long ago it was now, that all of that happened. Just a lot of sad things were happening. I think it was just important that we mentioned Inomata had also passed, because just like you said, it's just easy for people to just kind of forget, because Toriyama was just such a big name, and it just happened at all the same time.
And it's funny that the thread that binds everything together, at least a little bit of connective tissue, is that Toriyama had said if he wanted anybody to play Goku back in the day, he would have picked Jackie Chan.
Oh no.
And unfortunately, what we ended up getting was Jackie Chan as Ryu Saiba.
One day we'll get there. We'll get to a very large, complaint-filled episode about that one day.
But it is not today.
Thank you. No. There are other things to talk about. We went to Anime Las Vegas. This was 2 weeks ago now.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. And if anybody noticed a Ryo and Kaori walking around, we know at least 2 people did.
Yeah.
That was us.
Yeah, shockingly, the guy at the door who did the weapons check, he immediately was like, hey, it's Ryo and Kaori from City Hunter. Oh, that's great. We gotta be careful. Let's check that gun, Ryo, because we know that Ryo is a beast with this gun. He kind of went on and on about it.
No, he knew who we were, yeah. Later on, when we went to go sit down to just have a snack, a guy just asked, hey, can we sit here? And we're like, yeah, go ahead. And he's like, oh, I know who you are. And we're both kind of thinking, oh, did he recognize us from the internet or something? Because that happens sometimes. We're out in public. And he's like, oh, you're City Hunter.
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, we are. And he's like, hey, you seen the French movie?
And I was like, oh my god. A guy asked us about the French movie. Wow.
Wow, a man of culture. I have really appreciated that.
So, that went pretty well. Anime Las Vegas, Anime Pasadena, and Anime Riverside are all run by the same people, and they all do these free booths by professional photographers. They just have them there. You don't pay to get it done, and at some point, they slapped those photos on the internet. But we took photos with this photographer that was there, so maybe one day we'll share with you guys. We had some pretty decent photos.
They looked pretty dope, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I really liked them.
But in between all that, we actually got some more photos from the upcoming Netflix adaptation of City Hunter, and we're learning a little bit more about the plot here. Again, it does look very much centered on those first 5 to 6 episodes, so we're seeing more of the interactions between the characters that we know we've got. We've got one photo here of Kaori and Makimura just sitting down to a nice dinner. Mm-hmm. And we've got some very interesting, I shall say, shots of Ryo here. We've got one shot of him just in the Speedo. We've seen the shot from the trailer of him having Mokkori dance time.
So this is just another angle of that same scene, most likely.
But the other thing that we hadn't seen yet was, we could see in the little teaser there, Ryo being in some kind of a fight at a cosplay showcase or competition or something there.
Right.
Now we have a better look at what he's wearing, and he does seem to be dressed as a cowboy, he's got a cowboy hat and a trench coat, but he's also, I'll put it this way, he's wearing a horse.
Sure,
part of a horse.
So it's almost like if you think about at Halloween the gag kind of costumes, where sometimes you'll get a guy in a cowboy costume and he's got an inflatable horse around him. Sure, that's part of it. Okay, except what if we just narrowed this down to only part of the horse?
What if it was just the neck and the head of the horse, and that part of the horse was centered on Ryo's crotch? And we made it very obviously phallic shaped.
There's just an entire horse's head and neck coming out of your dick. That's what this picture is.
The article I pulled it from, I think it was Anime Eiga, that website, which you get a lot of Japanese cinema news from. I believe the term that they used to refer to it was horse mokkori.
Okay, sure.
And you know what? That seems on brand.
It's very on brand.
Because if we can't show a boner, we're going to imitate a boner using a horse. Wow.
That could go in a lot of really awful directions.
Very easily, yes. But the most important thing out of anything that we've covered right here before we get started, we made our first t-shirt sale.
Oh yeah, that happened.
Yeah.
I just got that email 2 days ago or something like that. So thank you to that one person.
Yeah, all right.
We haven't even purchased our own shirts yet.
We need to fix that.
Probably should do that.
At some point in the distant future.
Hey Josh, when we're done with this recording, recording, let's buy our own shirts.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. If we're not buying our own shirts, if you're not in your own corner, who's going to be?
Exactly. We'll fix that. I promise. Maybe next week we'll be able to report back. Hey guys, guess what? We bought our own T-shirts.
Yeah, merch sales.
We just lost money on our own shirts.
It really will have only lost for one shirt, because we'll have made one sale that'll cancel out the sale that was already made, and then we'll be in the hole for one more shirt.
I mean, we only see so much profit off of the one shirt sale.
Look,
the rest of it goes to the shop that
just be happy.
sells
Just be happy.
the shirts.
Just be happy.
Okay.
Be happy. All right?
All right.
Okay.
So, hey, you're never gonna believe this shit.
So we were done recording the episode. I was already getting ready to export it to my computer and start working on it since I'm the editor for every episode. We started recording at 8. We got done a little after 9. And I go and check Twitter. And what do I see on there? I see that the City Hunter trailer dropped.
During our recording.
And I'm not going to wait a week to cover this.
No, we gotta talk about it now.
We gotta talk about it right now.
We have to.
We gotta do it now.
Why does this keep happening?
Always when we're recording.
When we're recording, or it's in the editing process or something, so it doesn't get in there in a timely fashion.
Not this time.
Which is kind of what happened with the death of that Inamoto animator.
Right.
Before, like, that last episode came out, like, on the day that she passed away, so we couldn't get it. Like, this keeps happening.
And so now we've got this on our hands, and so we're going to go into it. It's like a minute 45, minute 50 of everything I was hoping for.
There's a lot of things going on here, so just off the dome before we click back through it, there's Shinjuku, so, that's correct. That is obviously correct. They got crows.
I saw Comedy Crow.
We saw Comedy Crows. Ryo, in that dancing Mokkori time, like, he finally loses the underwear, so he eventually gets completely naked in front of people.
Just like he does in Shinjuku Private Eyes.
So, that's accurate. He's driving around in the Mini Cooper.
The right model Mini Cooper.
The right model Mini Cooper, along with Makimura, and they're talking about Ryo saying, oh, it's time to go to Plan B, but Makimura is like, oh, you never had a Plan A. So we're seeing banter, like what their repertoire is,
their
between
camaraderie between
each other.
We see Saeko doing police work? What the hell?
Wow, is she actually a police officer that does police job stuff?
We see Cowdy pressing Ryo like, hey, what happened to my brother? Help me get revenge.
So we do confirm, yeah, he's gonna die. Then Kaori's gonna come up and she's gonna want that revenge. Guess what? They're talking about angel dust.
They're talking about angel dust?
Which they better, because they're basing this more on the manga than they are on the anime, so...
And since we just covered it in this episode, we see Child Soldier Ryo.
Holy shit. Like...
And then at the very end, we get a tease from a big bad wearing a ring that has U-T on it. That doesn't mean they went to University of Texas. No, that's Union Teope.
Union Teope. So they're not fucking around this time. This is probably going to be the most accurate City Hunter movie. They finally are gonna do it.
I see Cowdy wielding a blunt object, but she's not wielding a hammer.
I think they're gonna get to it. I think it's gonna show up. The cosplayer that we're seeing in this trailer appears to have at some point been on Angel Dust, so I guess maybe she was some kind of a soldier, or Union Teope was using her for something.
For a test subject.
But she got out of it mostly with her mind intact, but I bet you not totally. So,
which means it's kind of like Angel Dust, the animated movie we just saw back in November.
Meaning they could probably trigger it again. So, like, what Angel Dust is appears to have shifted over time.
Right,
like,
to something a little more modern.
It's a little less just straight up fucking cocaine.
Right.
And now it actually is a super drug that they can just turn on and off and make people into, like, sleeper cell units.
In the movie, it was... In the animated movie specifically.
In Angel Dust.
It was like nanomachines. Here, it's more like super soldier formula.
Yeah.
Which I think is more accurate to the manga. Because it acts like cocaine, but really it's supposed to be like a super soldier formula.
I mean...
like Captain America style super soldiers.
Hojo originally just, like, it was kind of just cocaine.
No, originally it was super cocaine. We went over that.
In the 80s, it was really just kind of super cocaine. And now it's more than just super cocaine.
Yeah, now it's something that we can take in a more post-Marvel world.
Yes.
And just for the hell of it, let's clip back through it real quick. I love the new arrangement for Get Wild Continual. It sounds like a good remix.
It is very good. Again, we see the XYZ board. There's some sick fights going on. Ryo is dodging some knife fights, some blades. He's taking some blades near his face.
One thing I definitely want to see more of, now that I see it here in this particular trailer, is that Ryo does seem to be able to do the back and forth between being very super serious and being super goofy.
Yes, it does look like he's gonna be capable of it.
Like this part here at the end where he's saying, "Hey, who ordered Uber Eats?"
None of you guys in the armor, the military riot gear.
Because the order's canceled. Dodge bullets. Like, that's what I was hoping for, the dichotomy there.
Yeah. We can see some of the inside of what I'm assuming is Ryo's apartment. It looks like it's his, right?
I mean, it's brick walls, so, I mean, we got that part right.
They have a sunken-in floor now with a big-ass couch. There's no more of this wooden picnic bench.
No, he's got a nice glass table here. It's more modern looking. But it does look a little bit like the apartment in Nicky Larson, just a little bit, because of the modern aesthetic.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There's a whole-ass bicycle inside here.
We see that he's got a bunch of, like, phone cards from, like, hostesses or perhaps escorts, I don't know.
Yeah, who
and
knows?
Cowdy's clearly disgusted.
It looks like it was just so heavy that it fell out of this box. It just collapsed out of the bottom and he's just got a shit ton of these cards. Yeah, we see a guy who must be on angel dust. He's picked up an entire vending machine and thrown it into the street.
Yeah, this dude's hulking out a little bit. Like, he's not getting bigger, but he is raging.
Yeah, this is definitely the super cocaine part. Their faces get all veiny and stuff, so that's a lot like, what is it in Batman?
Venom?
Like, it's making me think of Venom.
The stuff that Bane takes
Yes.
to become all hulked out.
Yeah. Yeah, that is the cosplayer, right? She's getting
Yeah.
all veiny in the face, so it seems to me like they're gonna be able to trigger it at some point. You can see they've injected her with something because she's on a table.
And then friends of ours pointed this out. I thought I recognized her here in the trailer, but now I've confirmed it with other friends of ours looking at this. We see actress Ayame Misaki here in this. She's been in not City Hunter, she's here in City Hunter, but no, she was in Tokume Sentai Go Busters as Escape, one of the villains. She was also in Cutie Honey the Live, and she's done her fair share of tokusatsu work.
Ryo is shooting up at a sniper, so he clearly sees snipers from really, really far away.
Like, he's got that kind of accuracy still.
Ryo appears to have given Kaori a gun to go get revenge. So, I don't know how that's gonna play out. Surely it's not as straightforward as it looks, because we need a whole movie to tell us what that actually is. He's got to have given her the messed up gun that doesn't hit
snub
things
nose.
right. Yeah, doing a crazy ass shot way up in the air to hit some tanks of some kind.
Some gas canisters, blowing them up. He's using other weapons other than the 357, though, which is in keeping with how they did it in Nicky Larson.
Right.
Like, he's a master at multiple weapons. It's just he prefers the 357 Magnum.
There's a scene in a club here, and he's got to do some shooting while inside a club, which I guess he's done that before in the show, too.
Yeah.
Here he is dressed up as that cowboy with that ridiculous horse coming out of his dick.
The horse Mokkori.
Yeah, he's calling himself the Stallion of Shinjuku here.
Which very much seems in keeping with his character.
There's some other sexy cosplay type lady that he's gonna get into a fight with, which maybe they're just gonna think that's a cosplay skit. Who knows?
It could be.
Kaori does appear to hit somebody in the head with something.
With a pipe, it looks like.
Like a pipe, yeah.
Like, I see the tease here for Union Teope, and I'm thinking, this can't just be one movie. It can't.
It really feels like this is way too much movie. It would have to be more later. It has to be. How can it not be more? Like, it's just too much stuff.
And like we talked about this on the show earlier in a previous episode, that they could stretch this out. If we know that that's what they're doing Angel Dust, they can throw that in one movie, they can throw Umibozu in one movie.
Yeah, we haven't even seen Umibozu in these trailers.
You can get a whole ass other movie out of Umibozu. They could do at least 2.
Well, yeah, because Angel Dust, the animated film, could not complete the story.
No.
And we introduced the concept of what angel dust is, finally.
It ends up open-ended at the end of that movie.
It seems very apparent that we have to have another movie to address, oh, here comes Shin Kaibara.
Because they don't explain Shin Kaibara's relation to Ryo in that movie,
Not very well. Like, he's there.
He's there.
So we have to go after Shin Kaibara, so there's got to be another animated film. That's why I'm saying, like, there's just too much content to put in this one movie.
Exactly, and if they're trying to piggyback off each other, they're telling the same basic story, you get them on both ends in multimedia. You get one live-action movie telling the Angel Dust story, and then you also have an animated movie telling the Angel Dust story. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Now, Takarazuka did it, but Takarazuka had more runtime, for one thing.
For one whole story,
one whole story, and two, they clearly were just blitzing through a bunch of points that show up in the manga and the anime, just blowing right through it.
This is the thing that it has to still measure up to, relating back to something like Nicky Larson, is are you able to still show, hey, we're very familiar with the source material, we know the story we want to tell, and we have to do this balancing act between hitting all the finer points of, like, this bucket list of greatest hits, like we gotta do Crows, we gotta do Hammers, we gotta do Mokkori, and then at the same time, giving it its own story that can breathe and tell who these characters are and the world they live in.
Right.
But that having been said, looking at it, this looks pretty promising. I'm not going to say it looks amazing, but it does look like it's going to have my attention.
It looks like a better anime adaptation than some of the other Netflix series we have seen as of late. It looks better than Yu Yu Hakusho.
Well, that's not a hard hurdle to jump.
And I understand that people really, really liked One Piece. I get that. Well, that having been said, if you're talking about super accuracy to source material, I don't know, this one's coming pretty close to that.
Well, because you have to give it the leeway of, you have to kind of go back and forth between, you know, something for casuals, something for the hardcore fans, something for casuals, something for hardcore fans. And so I think this is managing to hit that, at least now with what we're seeing here.
Well, that's also because this story is easily told in the real world, in a real world setting, because it's so steeped in an actual location that really exists.
And also, you know, making it less nanomachines and more super drug oriented, I think they can still tell that story in a way that people don't have to turn their brains off too much. I just wonder if they're telling it more realistically, like, okay, we can show veins popping up on somebody's face for angel dust, but you can't show me wooden hammer out of nowhere. That's what I'm afraid of.
They managed to get Laura Cowrie in Nicky Larson. They gave her an excuse for a couple of hammers. Well, one hammer was just a sledgehammer that she came out of. There were two sledgehammers, and then there was also, he had like a nightmare or something.
Well, yeah, he had a dream sequence in the car midway through the movie.
And she holds a 100-ton hammer.
Yeah, so that part, that's how they skirted that. Laura couldn't produce a hammer out of nowhere, but she at least held the two hammers and was shown to have the one from the anime at least in one shot.
Yeah, which was great. It was perfect. It's what it needed to be.
So
can they give this Cowrie for Netflix something like that? Or are we just gonna leave it at this lead pipe?
Like, if we've had to scale it back down to lead pipe, I think we lose something, quite honestly.
Yes.
Because it's such a staple.
I know.
For this anime. Like, the whole reason we have Hammer Women is because of this anime.
Yeah.
And so I think it would cheapen it if she doesn't ever use it.
I would agree.
So yeah, this drops on, this is the 7th that we're recording it. We have until the 25th.
It's pretty close, but we also knew that this one was coming. They told us there was going to be one more big one.
Ryohei Suzuki said that it was coming out, and we had been waiting, and then sure enough, like I said, we were done recording, and then, oh, well, what do you know? This is while you were recording, here it is.
Okay, great. And now back to your regularly scheduled podcast.
Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the actual podcast that you might be tuning in for today. And you're in for a doozy, because here we're going to be introducing a new character with a lot of history with Ryo.
Ooh.
So here at the top of the episode, we start out in Cat's Eye, and Cowdy's there with Miki and, surprisingly, Kasumi, who we haven't seen in a couple of episodes, but she, I think, has the distinction of being the only episodic character to come back a third time.
Yeah, and, like, she's not important. I don't know why
she was important enough to come back a third time.
But she doesn't affect this plot in any way.
No, she just happens to be there, and they're like, well, we could, invent a person, or, like, we can bring somebody back.
But we don't even need to bring anybody back. We don't need to invent somebody, and we don't need to bring somebody back.
We
don't need to do any
We've done
of
it.
that.
It's
No,
happened.
No.
It's already here. We're talking about it now.
Oh my god.
And for those of you who might have forgotten, Kasumi was the phantom thief that Ryo was looking at her ass. And then in this season, she was trying to get married off to that douchebag who took away Ryo's Mokkori.
Well, she was trying to get out of getting married to that guy.
Well, yeah, and that guy took away Ryo's Mokkori for like an episode.
Yeah, that happened. At least now she's an adult. In fact, that's kind of part of this plot here is like, hey, she's about to turn 20.
Right.
And also, she has the same birthday, at least the day, not the year maybe, as Miki?
Yes. Who we kind of sort of find out she's turning 29.
Probably turning 29.
Most likely. They're hinting at that. And so they're going to have a birthday party, and everybody's invited. Cowdy's told, hey, go ahead and invite Ryo. He's not with you right now, but you should go back to the apartment and tell him we're having a party tonight.
All right, I'm going to go back to the apartment, and I'm going to tell him, hey, we got to go to a birthday party. And she gets back, and Ryo is watching TV, and he's just watching an advertisement. He's
watching ass.
I don't know what this advertisement is for. Is it for this dress?
It's for something.
What is this ad for?
But what
is this commercial
The important
for?
thing for Ryo here is that the person on screen that is being featured for whatever it is, for perfume, for a dress, for, I don't know, Kodak film, I don't know what it was. The whole point here is that Ryo is enamored with this person's butt. And Cowdy's trying to tell him about the party tonight, and Ryo's very upset, like, hey, you're interrupting me enjoying some ass. Well, what are you doing?
Apparently, this person is even known for being the Backside Beauty, which I think is just a horrific name for a person.
Now,
just a terrible nickname for a person.
The thing about it, though, is from my understanding, this is actually a thing that goes on in Japan. Like, people just get notoriety for how nice their butt is. Like, I can think of one actress in specific back from 2007 who that was her nickname.
Backside Beauty?
Well, specifically, it was actress Rina Akiyama, and her nickname was Oshirina.
No!
Yeah,
that's awful!
Yeah, that was a thing.
That's like if your name was, Ass Samantha.
Yeah, because Oshiri means butt.
Yeah, that's an awful name. That's terrible. I hate that. I hate that for that person.
I mean, I think she's retired now.
Good. Get out of there, please. What a horrible thing to do to a person. I hate that. I hate that for these women.
Yeah, the objectification is awful. Now, for whatever reason, this actress on the screen, apparently she's known for her butt, but not her face. Not because nobody likes her face, it's that nobody's seen it.
No, it's because nobody looks at her face. They're just like, don't show me your face, baby. Show me that ass. The entire time that you know her, like, somebody must have seen her face because they had to book her for this commercial.
I mean, unless they're doing it like Ace Ventura style, like she's
signing all this paperwork with her ass.
Maybe, I don't know.
She has to use the Hanko stamp to stamp away this paperwork.
You know what? I'm not going to think about that any further because there's implications there I don't want to think about. Point being, now as Ryo is watching TV at this very moment, a news editorial or something is on TV right now saying, hey, so this woman, this celebrity who we are finding out just now is named Rosemary Moon. The person whose butt Ryo was just staring at, we're actually going to, for the first time ever, reveal what she looks like.
Because she's coming to Japan, like next week or something.
And so here it is, folks. Here she is. Picture. And she is a very pretty blonde lady. Definitely not from around Japan.
Blonde hair, blue eyes. Yeah.
And at the sight of this woman, you would think Ryo would be bouncing off the walls again, like Jim Carrey in The Mask, like, woo, wolf face. That's not what happens. He is mortified at who he sees on screen because...
This is more than crestfallen. This is
recognition. He knows that face. And that face has a name attached to it, and it's not Rosemary Moon. He calls out the name Bloody Mary.
Well, that already sounds intimidating and ominous, and Ryo is like, well, I gotta book the first flight the fuck out of this town. I am leaving. And he starts literally packing a suitcase, and he just throws everything he can possibly find anywhere in his vicinity inside the suitcase.
Ryo's just throwing in cat food. He's throwing in magazines. He's throwing in deodorant, whatever he can find. An alarm clock that's not even set to the right clock on the wall. And he's like, I gotta go, Cowdy. I'll see you in a month. I gotta go. We're not gonna talk about it. I'm just leaving.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
We don't have time for that. She's coming. I need to get down to the garage with our extra 3 cars in it. I need to get to the Mini. Oh shit, there she is.
I just want to go back to the part where you mentioned cat food because he literally threw a can of cat food.
No, there's a can of cat food in his suitcase.
He's feeding cats somewhere. He just has a can of cat food in his apartment, so he's feeding cats. He's taking care of a cat somewhere, Josh.
Maybe. I remember somebody has to take care of all those pigeons from several episodes ago, the carrier pigeons.
That's true. And every so often he does come up with a cat that he needs to use to spook Umibozu. So he must just feed cats to keep them friendly with him.
Maybe he goes to a cat cafe. Maybe he's got like a cat he's sweet on somewhere across the city.
I mean, maybe. That could happen.
That's a nice headcanon.
Anyway, yes, he went into the garage and we just blew past 2. There's 3 other cars in that garage. We already know he's got a bunch of cars, but like, I just want to mention it every time we can confirm. Yes, he still has a big garage with a shit ton of cars in it.
He's at least got a blue sedan, a red sports car, and another green Jeep that he walks past.
Some kind of sport utility vehicle of some variety.
But anyway, he gets to the Mini, and before he can even do anything, we see that this person, Rosemary Moon, aka Bloody Mary, or we'll just refer to her as Rio does, Mary for the rest of the episode, has already shown up.
She's sitting in his car. I don't know whether or not Rio locks his car. She might have just walked in, but if she didn't, she had to unlock that car.
And of course, Cowdy's like, Rosemary Moon, what are you doing here?
So she's just impressed, like, oh, the celebrity that I just found out about, right now. She's in our garage. That's kind of weird, but also I'm kind of impressed.
That feeling of being impressed goes away very quickly when Mary introduces herself. Oh, I'm not just a celebrity, I'm Rio's former partner.
So immediately from this point forward, Kaori's really intimidated, like, oh yeah, there were other partners before me, and this one's here. Oh no.
And this one's hot. Oh no. But it goes further than just her being attractive, as we're about to find out.
Rio is very upset about this whole thing. It's very clear right off the bat. Like, he's not being playful. He's not fucking around here. He's very much like, what the fuck are you doing in my car? And she's like, hey, what's the suitcase for? Were you trying to leave? And he's just got to deal with it. Now she's here.
Now she's up in the apartment, and apparently she can give as good as she can get as far as them throwing insults at each other like, oh, you're 24, huh, Mary? Looks like your butt's starting to sag.
Oh, yeah? Well, I guess your Mokkori is senile. Oh!
And Cowdy's here having to watch this back and forth between them. And I know what this is like when you're in the room with somebody that you think you're cool with, and then somebody else shows up, and they immediately have a rapport with one another.
This rapport is very bad, though. This is negative rapport.
No, it is, but it still shows...
Do they know each other? Yes. Does Rio like her? No, actually. Sure, he thinks she's hot, but he does not like her. He doesn't want to be around her. He doesn't like that she's there. She's starting to say, oh, well, I guess I'm just gonna stay here so I don't have to get a hotel room. And he's like, the hell you are, but she does it anyway.
And, you know, she's here very much constantly throwing it in Cowdy's face. Yeah, back when Rio was in the US, we were partners. Hey, wait a minute, you're his partner now, right? And then she, like, quick draws and pulls a gun out on Cowdy. And Cowdy doesn't know what to do. She wasn't expecting that. And Mary's like, oh, you didn't react to that. You didn't do anything. You didn't try to do anything back. What kind of amateur are you? Rio, what are you doing keeping amateurs around as your partner?
So Mary's throwing it back in everybody's face like, I bet you Kaori doesn't even know all that much about you. She probably doesn't know anything about you at this rate. She couldn't possibly know that much about you. And now Kaori's already feeling like, oh no, what else am I supposed to know about him?
Well, guess how much I know about Rio? Everything. And I mean everything.
And this does not make Rio happy, though. Rio's real upset about this. She further leans into him and is like, hey, so you remember you said we were gonna get married, right?
No, we're not. You just said some shit, and I didn't agree to it. I never said we were getting married.
And I don't think Kaori necessarily takes that specific comment totally to heart, but she is like...
Because Mary's like, I'm just kidding, but maybe. Like she's playing with him.
Yeah, which is, it's just an uncomfortable thing. So I don't think Kaori believes there's any threat of Rio wanting to get married, but she is, like, intimidated about, like, what is this weird, like, this is weird behavior for a person to be having with Ryo right now.
Well, because, like, you think they're just gonna have a normal city hunter day, and then all of a sudden she's blindsided by this attractive, nice-ass blonde who's here being like, hey, guess what? I know your man. I know his secrets. Like, how's that gonna make you feel?
The mood is brought down for almost the entirety of the episode.
Right.
Everybody is miserable the whole rest of the time.
So we should go ahead and make everybody miserable right now.
And now let's take her over to a birthday party.
Well, let's take her
so
over
she can make the birthday party fucking miserable.
So, like, she goes with everybody over to Cat's Eye, like, all right, let's get out of the apartment for everybody's sake, and let's take this over and make this someone else's problem. And the thing about it is, Ryo has established with Cowdy, yes, Mary here is also a sweeper. She works in the underworld just like the rest of us. So people in the underworld will recognize her as Bloody Mary. That's her moniker in the underworld, just like City Hunter is Ryo's moniker in the underworld. So as soon as they get in the door of Cat's Eye, immediately she spots Umibos and he's like, oh, what the shit, Falcon's here?
And Falcon's like, Bloody Mary? Why are you walking in with Ryo?
And they're both getting ready to draw guns.
Well, really, it's mostly Mary drawing the gun.
But,
and
like,
Ryo's gotta come in and stop Mary and grab her by the gun and be like, no, we're at a truce right now.
We're actually
like,
cool.
I mean, like, he doesn't outright say, hey, actually, we're friends finally.
Yeah, we're nonverbal BFFs.
They would never say it to each other's faces, but let's be real, they're friends now.
Yeah, they're best friends. Like, but you see, though, he stops Mary, but Umibozu was getting up.
Well, if somebody was gonna attack him, like, surely he would have to do something about it.
Right, and as soon as he sees that Ryo has diffused the situation, he just sits his ass back down and offers her a drink because he is still, like, I guess you'd call him the proprietor of the establishment, or at least the guy who helps.
He's still running a cafe here.
Yeah, he's still running a business.
But Mary's just like, well, the Ryo I know would have never allowed this truce to have ever happened.
There's something to be said about that, and really goes throughout the whole episode. Not just Cowdy's feeling of feeling displaced with Mary now showing up, but it's also this feeling of when a friend of yours shows up that you haven't seen in about, let's say, 4 or 5 years, and you've changed as a person.
Sure.
And they don't know how to reconcile the difference between the you in their head and the you are now.
Right.
And that's kind of where Mary's coming from here. So they kind of call a truce here between everybody in the room, and they go ahead and have the birthday party. But again, it's coming across very evidently in this episode, Mary's kind of a bitch.
It's pretty bad. I mean, it's already established, I think, pretty well, but it just gets worse. She just doesn't do anything to try to make anybody feel comfortable in any way, shape, or form. She's hitting the bottle hard.
Yeah, she's knocking them back here at the party, and I feel like it could go one of two ways. Either, like, I don't care if I make anybody uncomfortable at this party, or I'm knocking them back as a cover for me letting myself say something.
Because Ryo says, hey, don't you think you should maybe stop drinking for a little bit? And she's just like, well, I'm gonna need this alcohol if I'm going to be fraternizing with the enemy.
And so, because it's a birthday party, the topic comes up kind of naturally. Hey, Ryo, when's your birthday? And Ryo's kind of playing it off like he normally would, like, hey, if you want to find out when my birthday is, you gotta give me some mokkori, yeah.
They just think, oh, that's just typical Ryo. Of course he would ask for that. And they start asking Kaori, like, Kaori, come on, you know when his birthday is, right? Oh, no, actually, he's never told me either. Which is, it's a little weird, I guess, because it's been a couple of years now. She's still got no idea when his birthday is.
Sidebar for that for a second. You would think after about a year and a half you would ask somebody if you didn't know.
Especially if you were living in the same building as them.
Yeah, like, we clearly know Cowdy's birthday. Nobody's gonna forget Cowdy's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of hard to forget Cowdy's birthday. Episode 5 is built around Cowdy's birthday.
Yeah.
It's March 31st.
Yeah, we just missed her birthday in real world.
In real life. But here, the fact that Cowdy doesn't know, and she's saying out loud, you know what, I don't actually know when his birthday is. He's never told me. That's like blood in the water to a shark. And our shark here is named Mary.
Oh, you don't know? Well, of course you don't know, because Ryo also doesn't know. He doesn't even know how old he is.
And that's how little you know. And it, like, as far as we're aware, the party ends right there. Because it just jumps to the next scene, but nobody talks, and Ryo's got this look on his face.
Like, why the fuck are you saying this out loud? There's a reason why I'm not telling people. What is wrong with you?
Like, she's just putting all his business out there on Front Street.
Like, that's not her business to be telling
That's not
people.
her place.
It's not her place to tell that. That's for Ryo to decide when he is comfortable that he'll talk to somebody about that.
It's a thing that happens, I guess, too, also when, I guess, kind of similarly, somebody you've been in a relationship with shows up for whatever reason and they start talking about your business.
Yeah.
Like, that's something you and them might have talked about before, but I'm not sure that's something that you can say in mixed company. You know, certain private details about a person, you know?
And Ryo is clearly upset. Everybody's upset. It is the next day. Mary has slept at Ryo's apartment.
Well, she's sleeping in Cody's room because Cody's out on the couch.
Mary is also sleeping naked.
Well, she's got panties on.
Cool.
And Cody's there in the living room just kind of stressing out, like, Mary's in her head. Like,
Yeah.
she's like, oh my god, what isn't Ryo telling me? How come he wouldn't tell me about this? How come I don't know? How come I didn't ask? Like, she's crumbling mentally right now.
And this other person knows so much more than me, and now she's here? Like, what is all that about? Ryo walks up to Mary, still asleep in bed. He's so mad.
This is the most pissed I've seen him, like, not, oh, Cody's about to die, I'm pissed at the enemy pissed. Like, no, I'm pissed for me right now. Like, why would you tell her this? You need to go apologize to Cowdy for how you made her feel.
Take responsibility for your actions right now. Also, I forbid you for saying stuff about my past.
Yeah, I forbid you from talking about it.
In front of Cowrie. You can't say this shit in front of Cowrie.
And she's still like, well, doesn't she deserve to know? How come she can't know? How come you don't want her to know? And he's trying to play it off like, well, I mean, that's old stuff, you know? Let's leave the past in the past. And she gets up to, like, playfully get closer to Ryo. And as she's doing this, we see a little bit of nipple there.
Yeah, they went ahead and drew nipple, so that means that got aired on television. Cool. I mean, it's very small and very brief, and it's barely noticeable because it's all kind of the same skin tone.
But, like, she's there trying to press Ryo, like, how come she can't know? How come she can't know? And she's, like, got her arms wrapped around his neck.
And Ryo's, like, actually not biting. Like, you would think he's seeing a mostly naked woman right in front of him, and that would do something.
A mostly naked, nice-bodied, hot woman. His first thought isn't, great, Mokkori times for me. It's, oh shit, no, if you're doing this, that means, like, 3, 2, 1... And right on cue, here comes Cowdy through the door. Hey, who wants breakfast? What the fuck?
And of course, in comes the hammer, and Ryo gets the hammer, as if this is his fault, and this time it genuinely isn't, because he was trying...
He was trying to stop it.
Well, he was trying to give her a piece of his mind. He was, like, genuinely pissed at her, and he gets punished for this one. This is, like, the one time he genuinely didn't deserve it.
Cowdy, of course, naturally is pissed because of what she thinks is happening. She's like, well, no breakfast for you, buddy.
Why? God!
Ryo's on the floor just like, oh, great, it happened again.
Meanwhile, Mary's going, hey, why'd you let her hit you? You and I both know that you could have dodged that hammer. And this is so, like, what? This whole time, you've been getting hit by these hammers, and you could avoid these hammers?
This is the first time.
This is the first time it's come up.
That a character has broken the illusion of, oh, this is just cartoony and fun and all that. No, this is the first time somebody has mentioned, you can dodge that. We know you can dodge that. I know you can dodge that.
In fact, in interviews with Tsukasa Hojo, he further impresses, yes, at any point in time, Ryo could decide not to be hit by Kaori's hammers.
But he chooses to be hit.
This is word from God. It's not just this one-off line here. Word from God says Ryo decides to let Kaori hit him with hammers.
And like that, maybe you understand because, you know, we've been doing this so long. That in its own weird way between the two of them is a love language.
Sure, for sure.
That's their flirting, that's their foreplay, that's their camaraderie, that's their relationship is built on you're allowed to check me when I'm out of line.
In fact, that's part of the game, and we think that's fun, and that's just the nature of our relationship, is sometimes I do a goofy thing just to piss you off, and then sometimes you hit me with a hammer. Haha, that is our language between each other.
And the thing about it is, to a certain extent, I get Rio being upset, like, how dare you speak to what is unspoken between us, me and Cowdy. And Mary, again, continues pressing. So what? That was jealousy right now? Was that jealousy from her? Rio's still on the floor, is like, no, it's not jealousy. She's just violent. It's fine. And here, again, cutting to the quick, Mary's like, oh, okay. So she's clearly an amateur. You let her hit you. The only answer for any of this, why you wouldn't tell her about your past, why everything has gone down the way I've seen in the last 24 hours, you love her, and you don't want her to know about your past because you're afraid she might leave you.
No!
What? No, like, she has no family left. That's why I let her stay here.
I'm just doing something nice for her. You don't have to do anything nice for her, Rio. She's an adult. She can take care of herself. And Rio sits and thinks about it, and he's like, damn it, she's fucking right. But I'm not gonna tell her that.
Like, she's over here trying to separate him. Like, now's a good time to ditch her. You should ditch her.
Like, she's just not even trying to have any good rapport with
just
anybody.
No chill.
Just why? You just show up just to antagonize people. What is going on?
And because of everything that's just happened, Cowdy goes down to the gun range.
And Cowdy starts firing, and she's missing. She's pissed, so she's shooting, but she doesn't hit her target, and she's real upset about it, and she's like, I guess I really am an amateur. I just can't even hit anything.
Hey, Cowdy, you need a coach? Here's Mary in the doorframe.
No! So Cowdy tries to leave, but Mary's like, hey, bet you want to ask me a few things, right? And it actually does get the better of Cowdy, like, yes. Okay, let's go have a conversation.
Instead of going to have this private conversation initially, they decide to go back to Cat's Eye, where everything was already weird the night before.
Right.
And the whole time we see Kasumi and Miki, like, trying to eavesdrop on this entire conversation because they're being nosy. And you would be, because everybody wants to know, so what's...
Well, especially
what's
because Mary's being fucking weird in their cafe. Like, why wouldn't they try to listen in? Like, they're holding menus up to their ears, like, cupped up against their ears.
Yeah, like cones. So here, Mary's telling Cowdy, so, you want to know about Rio's birthday, don't you?
About why he doesn't know when his own birthday is or how old he is. And Cowdy's like, yeah, I gotta admit, that's really bothering me now.
I don't know, he told me not to tell you, but if you guys are gonna get hitched, I should probably tell you.
Cowdy is, like, kind of flustered by that, but still, she has to admit she wants to know. But even then, Mary's like, oh, you're gonna hear about it, and it might make you want to leave, because you'll realize you're in two totally separate worlds. Are you sure you want to know about it? But she knows Cowdy wants to know, and Cowdy does want to know, so she says, yeah, let me know. But then they catch, oh wait, Miki and Kasumi are listening in, so we can't be here. We gotta go.
Alright, we'll take this somewhere else. So they go out on, like, somewhere on the riverfront, and they're kind of, like, sitting on the railing there alongside the river, and now Mary decides to give this entire ass plot dump for Rio's backstory, and this is the first time we're actually hearing it here in the show.
This is a pretty big deal, yeah.
So it turns out, as we've mentioned here on the podcast throughout several episodes, Rio is Japanese, but he was not raised in Japan. Turns out he was raised somewhere in a war-torn country, somewhere in Central America, and like so many other tragic, heroic figures, his parents were with him when he was very young on a commercial flight. The flight went down somewhere over the jungles of Central America, and somehow Rio was the only survivor of the plane crash.
And he was just a little kid, so he was probably barely school age. We just see him walking around out in the forest or wherever in the jungle. I guess this would be pretty similar to the, maybe around the Amazon. Maybe it's rainforesty?
It could be.
I don't know. I'm not really sure. Very leafy and green.
And he wandered for several days until he came upon an encampment of gorillas who were the only people around that could potentially take care of him. And the only way that they could take care of him was teaching him to take care of himself by becoming a child soldier.
And he was a child soldier for years. Years and years and years until he was at least a late adolescent, right? Like, he's practically almost an adult by this point.
And that's the life that he grew up in. That's all he knew was war. just constant civil war in these countries that he'd landed in. He's doing some terrible things in that backstory, a lot of which gets covered in the manga but doesn't get covered here in this episode.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily know that it gets covered in the correlating chapters of this manga either. I'm not certain that happens because I don't think Mary knows all of those details necessarily.
Not the finite things,
but
no.
This would have been approximately the time that Ryo meets Shin Kaibara.
Yes.
Right, like, we say this now because it will never come up in the anime.
Right.
So, saying it now, I think, is appropriate, because Shin Kaibara, he's the guy who runs the organization...
Union Teope.
Union Teope. They start a whole bunch of wars and uprisings in lots of different countries, and I think that was happening somewhere in Central America as well. He sort of becomes Ryo's new adopted father. That stuff is not mentioned here in this episode. It will never be mentioned in the anime. But it's super important. It comes up later on, like in this last movie.
In Angel Dust.
In Angel Dust. But that is what is happening here. What she is describing, basically, is that information, but she didn't have, like, those little bitty intricate details of it.
And so after the war finally got settled there in that country, wherever Ryo was, the government that was then put in charge decided to push out all of the guerrillas in that country. So Ryo eventually made his way up to the US, where he had one partner. That partner died, and then Ryo got a second partner who happens to be Mary.
And I'm just wondering, like, when did What's-His-Not Mick Angel come in? The anime version of Mick Angel. Because he's another partner, right? Is he the partner in between Mary and Kaori? Like,
well, because I think it's, the way they're setting it up is, it's the first partner, Mary, that other guy whose name escapes me every time you say Mick Angel. But
because his name is supposed to be Mick Angel, because that's who he was in the manga.
Then he moves to Japan, and then he gets partnered up with Makimura, and then Kaori. I think that's how that works.
I think that's how
so
that is.
If you're counting Kaori, Ryo's had 5 partners, I think. Yeah. I believe that's accurate. So now, Kaori is burdened with all this knowledge, and Mary's just there with a smug-ass look on her face, like, well, now you know. And Kaori's just, like, walking off in a stupor.
She doesn't even respond. What can she say? She needs to go and think about this for a while. And Mary's just in her own head like, yep, I did it. All proud of herself, like...
I knew that bitch wouldn't cut out for this.
Well, she just needs to leave anyway. Like, Ryo shouldn't have this person as a partner in the first place. So, you know, it all works out well enough in the end. It's fine.
And so she's done this. Ryo walks into Cat's Eye because while all this has been going on, he's been kind of looking off wistfully out the window at the apartment. He walks into Cat's Eye and he looks kind of depressed. And Kasumi and Miki pick up on this.
And they're both like, well, whatever his past is, I don't think Ryo wanted Kaori to know about it, and he looks pretty upset, like he thinks Kaori is gonna leave. That, like, they can at least intuit that much.
Like, Ryo's not hiding it very well.
No, he's really not.
And then Mary comes into the cafe, and she's smiling ear to ear.
Oh, by the way, I told Kaori absolutely everything about your past. Oh, I hope you don't mind. What do you mean? I hope you don't mind. What are you talking about? I very specifically said, the one thing you need to not do is talk about my fucking past in front of her, and you went directly to her, and you did it anyway. He is furious.
And he gets up, and he, like, starts at Mary, and you think he's gonna do something. Like, the intensity with which he got up, turned around, and then bolted towards Mary, who's right there at the door. Like, you think he's gonna, like, do something he might regret later.
Which, I mean, I understand on an emotional level why you might want to do that. But, like, if it had actually ended up that way, that could have been some heinous shit. Thankfully, he, like, makes a hard...
Right.
Like, he bolts past her, out through the door, and just aims for another pretty lady out on the street and starts flirting with her instead. This is, like, in my mind, it is the only thing he can do to play off how upset he is to just get the fuck out of there and do something else.
Like, this is his masking for, oh man, I can't deal with the rage I'm feeling, how disappointed I feel, how upset I am right now. And so he puts the mask back on like he's known to do. Hey, I'm horny sexy man. Hey, you want to go out with me, baby? and this lady like throws like a newspaper stand over his head.
And he's like, oh, I got rejected 30 times and now this lady makes 31. And I'm sitting here thinking about it, wondering if he really hit on 30 other women before he got to Cat's Eye, or if he inflates those numbers as part of his running persona.
I fully believe that he makes it up. Those numbers are not accurate.
Yeah.
Some days it is. Some days he has in fact hit on dozens of women, but today in particular, I think he's bluffing.
Sure. And actually, Miki and Kasumi believe him when he's running out because he saw a sexy woman out on the street, and they're like, oh my god, I can't believe this man. And I'm over here like, I can't believe you ladies fell for it, because Mary did not fall for it. The look on her face is like, yeah, you're pissed. Like
Mary knows.
She knows she fucked him up.
And while that's going on there, we go back to Kaori just kind of wandering the streets of Shinjuku, just in that stupor. And unfortunately, because she's not really paying attention to where she's going, she bumps into either a lowlife or a Yakuza who goes immediately into the I'm hurt, give me money scam.
It's a real stupid scam, and I can't believe people even to this day apparently still sometimes do it, but it happens. And so he jumps out in front of her with a second guy, like, hey, I can't believe you completely dislocated my shoulder from my arm, you 90-pound woman with no weight behind her, barely tapping me.
Yeah, I saw the whole thing happen. You need to give him money.
Thankfully, for some reason, Umibozu is out there because he left the cafe when he realized Mary's gonna try and tell Kaori some shit.
And thankfully he's there, being large and intimidating in kind of almost widescreen.
Well, no, they were using the fisheye lens kind of effect around the edges of the picture, around the edges of the frame. So, like, tall buildings were looking warped. The sky, the clouds in the sky were looking kind of warped to give you the impression of just how enormous of a person Umibozu is.
So thankfully Umibozu scares him off, and he tells Kaori, look, we should probably talk.
And so they go off someplace else to have that conversation.
And I just want to talk about the backgrounds here for a second, because a lot of the backgrounds here in this episode, one earlier during the party at Cat's Eye, and right here when Kaori and Umibozu are about to have this conversation, they very much look like they were taken from photographs.
Yeah, this happens a lot. It happens, I'd say, significantly more often in modern anime. It happens so frequently that I just feel like background art has forever changed in anime.
It's not so much art anymore, I don't think. It's
well,
just
I mean,
photographs.
I'm not gonna say it's not art. I will say that there is a difference between modern backgrounds and the backgrounds we're seeing in this episode, because they both clearly look like they were sourced from photographs, but modern anime looks like it's sourced from a photograph and you've got an anime filter on it, and maybe somebody does a little bit of touch-ups, right? I'm sure somebody still goes in there and does something by hand, right? But these background paintings in this episode of City Hunter 2 look like, sure, we have sourced it from a photograph, but somebody still had to go over it by hand, the entire thing by hand, still draw on top of it, still watercolor on top of it, and make their own adjustments to it.
And make it look like it's a part of the foreground where Umibozu...
the background.
Well, no, the foreground, because the foreground where Umibozu and Kaori are, that looks animated, whereas the background definitely looks like it came from a photograph, is what I'm saying.
You just mean it looks like it complements the foreground.
Right, like that's what they're doing right now. They've complemented how they're having to paint that photograph to match the style of everything else that's in the frame.
Yeah, so it looks quote-unquote real, but it also looks like it belongs there.
Yes, and it's a very unique quality that I don't know that I've seen in a lot of older anime either.
That's true.
I have to give so much credit to Umibozu here. Umibozu is being a G right now. He's being a good person, the go-between for Kaori and Ryo right now, because he's like...
He wasn't even asked by anybody to do this.
No, he wasn't. And he's telling Kaori, bet you feel pretty upset by everything that you just found out, huh?
And Kaori's like, well, yeah, like, I gotta admit, it threw me off. Was I jealous? Yes, because this person had been in his life all this time, and I'm not feeling like I'm a good enough partner.
Like, I've known him for 3 years, and I don't know that this is right for me to be his partner at this point.
I also thought it was weird that she said 3 years, and it's only been barely over 2, but you know what? It's fiction, so we're just gonna let them fudge that if if they feel like
yeah,
it, I guess.
that might have been just a last minute, hey, has it been 3 years or 2? I don't know. We've been working on the show. Let's just hurry up. But in actuality, if we're going by dates, it's actually only been 2.
Like 2 years and maybe 3 months.
Thereabouts, yeah. And so the big thing coming out of Cowdy right here is, why wouldn't he tell me? How come he wouldn't tell me all of these things about him? And Umibozu, being the nicest we've ever seen him, tells her, well, maybe he didn't tell you because he didn't want you looking at him different.
Well, why would that be? Well, because he thinks of you as a partner, but also more than just a partner. And she's like, what?
And Cowdy's like, well, more than a partner? What does that mean?
And Umibozu's just super embarrassed, like, I don't think I can say that out loud. He just goes bright red. He really can't say it.
Because, like, Cowdy, this is the thing. I imagine this is the part of Cowdy that maybe knows better, but won't admit to herself what she actually believes about Ryo in relation to her. That way she doesn't get disappointed if it wasn't true.
That's true.
Some part of her, by this point, knows that Ryo loves her.
Very probably, but she just can't bring herself to, like, really confront that. I don't think either her nor Ryo could do it.
Well, yeah, because if they actually admit it, then everything would change.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it wouldn't change so much, it's just that that's a really scary thing for people, is changing those relationship parameters.
Sure.
But then Umibozu does the one more nice thing that he could possibly do, is clear the air that needed to be cleared up here. And he tells her, there's one more thing I gotta tell you before I go, because this is getting kind of weird. So Mary, she wasn't told by Ryo all the stuff that she knows. Ryo's former partner that probably got brought up to you before, the person that died before Mary became his partner, that partner was Mary's dad.
And he's the one that told her everything. So, you know, it wasn't Ryo who said it. She didn't learn it from Ryo. Ryo didn't trust her so much that he told her that information. He literally has never told anybody. And Kaori's just like, oh, well that changes everything. Thanks, Umibozu. She's actually feeling way better at this point.
Umibozu kind of walks off as we start to hear Still Lover playing. He's like, yeah, you think about that. And it like freezes on him walking away. Cowdy looking so relieved on her face.
I like that that's where this ends and not in this really awkward, uncomfortable, oh no, I'm so upset.
Cliffhanger.
Yeah. I like that this is what the cliffhanger is. Like, oh, we've got hope. We can still fix this.
Yeah, we can work through this. We can fix it. And that's where part 1 of this 3-parter ends.
So clearly, it doesn't get fixed right away because we still got 2 more episodes.
Well, yeah, because Mary's here to ruin shit.
Yeah.
For Ryo, for whatever reason. And it's pretty telling that if you're watching the preview for next episode, we see how much Mary really does want to ruin shit for Ryo. It looks like she's trying to kill him.
In a pretty permanent sort of a way.
In a pretty permanent sort of a way, yeah. She's upset.
Yeah, she's pretty mad.
She's got some feelings. She's in her feelings right now. But this, I think, is one of the definite you have to watch this episode of City Hunter episodes in total. Of course, obviously because of the plot, but also because of the depiction of the characters' relationships between each other. Like, you go back to when Umibozu was first introduced, you know, on a job to try and mow down Ryo.
Just some random ass guy.
And you go to now where he's like going to bat for Ryo. Mm-hmm. Like, that's character growth.
It could be that he's just like, man, fuck Mary. And he just needs to make sure we clear this shit up right away because Mary is just a fucking problem.
like somewhere there's an offshoot episode or moment, blooper, I don't know, where Umibozu pulls Ryo aside and he's like, I just need you to know I never trusted that woman. And like that's the thing about it is like if Ryo knew, I don't know that it comes up in the next 2 episodes. If Ryo found out that Umibozu did this for him, like he owes him a solid.
He really does, and he doesn't even know it.
He doesn't even know.
Umibozu wasn't doing it to get anything.
No, and that's the thing. Like he will help Ryo, but he absolutely doesn't go out of his way necessarily to be this nice.
He must be really mad at Mary. He must hate Mary.
But honestly, it could also speak to what he thinks of Cowdy as his partner. Like
that's true. He doesn't have a problem with Cowdy.
He's never had a problem with Cowdy. He's been very nice to Cowdy this whole season.
He's got a problem with Ryo. He doesn't have a problem with Cowdy.
Like, I can't stand Ryo and his perverted ass, but you're cool. I taught you everything you know. and I'm gonna help you out. Like that's how that comes across.
It is.
So like this is really good. This is a nice juicy episode, and now we get to see where this plays out because it doesn't resolve in one more episode. We still got 2 more.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to see how Mary messes things up. And I think there's a couple of other things that get addressed as far as the intricacies of Rio and Cowdy's relationship that Mary's just going to speak straight to.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken.
I believe.
Yeah.
We'll come back next time when we cover the 62nd episode of City Hunter 2. Good luck, my sweeper. City Streets for the both of us. Part 2.
And if you want to catch us outside this podcast, you can always find us both over on most social media. I'm at JoshKnightTheFirst.
And I'm at MarzGurl. Thank you all so much for listening to our 113th episode of MokkoriPlay. And if you don't come back next episode, someone's gonna have it out for Josh.
It's the mailman, isn't it?
Man, you already found out.
It's okay. I was expecting him. Tomorrow, at the same time he normally shows up.
You're never home when he usually shows up.
Which means I got the drop on him.